Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Adventure Paradox podcast. We have an author with us today. She's an author, she's a naturalist. She has put some really incredible work into the world. She is going to have a podcast coming this spring geared towards children. We'll talk about all of this in a minute. But first of all, Susie Spikol, how are you and where in the world are you coming in from today?
Oh, Kat, so glad to be on your podcast. So nice to meet you. I am in southwestern New Hampshire, and that's kind of where I am, a little tiny little town in Hancock, New Hampshire. No traffic lights, one store, that's it.
Ooh, I love it. Similar to my little town. One stoplight, mom and pop stores. I love it. And I just want to read your introduction because it's so powerful and I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Ever since she can remember, naturalist and writer Susie Spikol has always looked for where nature and story meet. Over the course of her 35-year career as a naturalist, she has taught thousands of children, parents, and teachers, and given hundreds of public talks and received numerous awards, including the Garden Club of America's Whole Award and New Hampshire's Environmental Educator Award. Congratulations. Like,
Thank you.
been putting a lot of work out into the world. She is premiering her first podcast this spring, Wild at Home. As I said, it'll be a podcast for children and it will premiere on New Hampshire Public Radio. Very cool. Your first book, published in 2022, The Animal Adventurer's Guide: How to Prowl for Owls, Make Snail Slime, and Catch a Frog Barehanded, won the National Parenting Products Award. We'll talk about your other two books in a minute, but can we start with that one? Like, what was it about? Where did it come from? And how would you like our listeners to be thinking about this book today?
Well, it is an activity guide for families. So I like for everybody to think about it as an opportunity as a family or as an individual or as a kid to go out and connect with the everyday animals that are in their neighborhood. So I'm not talking about like having, bald eagle experiences unless that's in your neighborhood. I'm talking about kind of woolly bear, caterpillars, and ladybugs, and kind of very entry level animals connecting with them, kind of the everyday creatures.
I love that. And I don't think I have ever heard that expression, entry level animals. It's making me think about when my children were really small and roly-polies and, insects and spiders and butterflies and all the little things on the ground. What would you say your entry-level animals or gateway animals for little ones might be? You mentioned a few, but what are some of your favorites?
Yeah, I think kids really want to touch animals, and I think it's important for them to touch animals respectfully, to be taught a respectful way to do it. And thinking mostly of things like ladybugs and earthworms and grasshoppers and crickets. I was just outside today with a group of students, and we found a big, juicy cricket at the end of it's getting cold where I live, so this is the last bit of the cricket's life, but it was so big and beautiful, and everybody got a chance to hold it and feel it. And I think, those things go right into the heart of a child, and it's visceral. It's kind of what we need to be doing to make those connections happen. Like,
Mm.
when you have a baby and you have those like 36 hours where it's skin to skin, or 48 hours where you just are like in touching your baby and your baby's on you and your husband or partner or whoever, whoever's in your family. And that skin connection is where you bond. Well, I feel like that's true for some animals and kids, like that holding in the hand is that skin to skin connection for them to develop a deep relationship with the natural world.
Ooh, so good. And it does make me curious. Your upbringing for you, were you out in the woods? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I had a really interesting upbringing where I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, which most people would probably think, how do you become a naturalist and live in Brooklyn, New York? I was really fortunate to have parents that were bird watchers, so we went all over the city and went birding. And then we had summer times up in Vermont, and that's where I really had my chance to kind of be out in the wild world. But I did love the Brooklyn experiences, sort of like the cracks in the sidewalk and the little bits of nature that you could find in between buildings. And whenever you did find nature, it felt really special because it was so
Mm,
uncommon.
so good. I spent a little bit of my youth in Wenatchee, Washington, which is like the apple capital of the world, right? And then we moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and that's mostly where I grew up. Very dry, very, very different environments. And I remember going back to Seattle and being at, I believe it's the Powell bookstore, this huge bookstore that's like 7 stories. I might be exaggerating, but it's a really big bookstore. And the sun came out, Susie. I swear the whole bookstore like tilted because all of the people in the bookstore moved to the windows like, sun. And I remember thinking, in a place like Seattle, a very, very wet, humid environment, you're even hungrier for sunshine. In the same way, growing up in the desert, we're hungry for rain. I would always say the desert will sing when it rains. It's like raindrops. Oh my gosh, you disappear immediately, evaporate. And my experience of going to New York City, I've only been twice. The second time, the year my book came out, it was part of my book series. And I remember thinking, wow, seeing nature in the city, you're so much hungrier for it. It's so much more important here in a way, that
Yeah.
paradox, because it's only in the sidewalk. It's only in the park. They've had to work really hard to keep it, but nature just has this wildness to hold on wherever we are. So I love that story. And like, of course, that's where it started for you.
Yeah, I loved how you described that kind of resilience of nature to kind of pop up, but it does find its way in the cracks. Or for me, there were like vacant lots in my neighborhood, and that's kind of where it all was, the butterflies, caterpillars. There were even fireflies on my block in Brooklyn. This is, back many years ago. I don't know if they're still there, but it was pretty magical.
I love this magic. And when you're speaking to your audience and thinking about your readers, are you thinking about that child you once were? Do you feel like your avatar, as they like to say, is the kid in the city or the parent, or who are you really channeling your genius to?
Oh, that's sweet. I actually think that I never really grew up. I am still just a kid who is so excited to see the everyday nature. Like I love like slugs and snails and oh, I love mushrooms, just things that you can see in your everyday world. I love all those birds that come to your feeder, the chickadees, the blue jays. I'm a big fan of squirrels, chipmunks, things like that, salamanders, things
Mm,
that I encounter on an everyday basis where I feel like I can have a deep kind of relationship or connection to. So I think I'm really just connecting with the kids that I work with at their level. I never got past being 10 years old in my excitement about the world. And that's really what I bring to the table when I'm teaching.
I love it. I love it so much. And something we touched on before we started recording is that line or spectrum between domestic animals or farm animals or animals that we might care for versus the wildness of nature. How do you see those two in your work or in your teaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think domestic animals are really important in the development of children's kind of sense of compassion for other beings. First, cat or a dog, a hamster, those pets that we live with, that's really where children can see, like, step in the paws or the feet of another animal. They kind of can pretend to be them. And I think that's so important. And then with the wild animals, they're always such a gift. You don't know what you're going to see. And that's what's really compelling about going outside into the natural world is every day is an unexpected trip. You don't know what is out there. And that's very exciting. And it's always, I think, a teaching opportunity. You walk along and you see um, something like a snake, and it's a chance to talk about it, look at it, think about it, be with it. But then you can go home and be with your domestic animals. My kids grew up having chickens, and I think that was really important, how to care for an animal. All of those things teach us how to be generous humans and how to kind of give to animals in the world. And since we can't really go up and hug something like a bobcat or, pet a bear, you can, though, give your dog a hug and spend time with a horse. And those animals were from a line that was once wild. So there's always a little bit of wild in every domestic animal. And I love having kids spend time thinking about that and looking at those connections.
So good. Yeah, I love that compassion for another being. And
Mm.
you had me thinking about don't judge another until you walk a mile in their moccasins or something like that.
Right.
And I was thinking, or a mile in their hooves, or
Oh,
with their
yes.
paws, or with their wings. And just to get into the imagination of how children can often get a little closer to understanding nature and specifically when caring for a domestic animal. I love that you had chickens. My kids are obsessed with chickens, by the way. I'm very happy our neighbors have 12 chickens. We got plenty of animals. Um, but there's something about chickens or animals who live outside where you are going outside into nature to connect with them. They're not necessarily coming in and out of your house, although maybe your chickens did. I don't know.
No.
Our pony has been inside the yeah. But I'd love to just hear you touch on that connection to drawing children out into nature and the cycle of care, as you see,
Yeah.
the naturalist.
Well, one thing you just reminded me of, Kat, is I have a good friend that has had chickens in the past, and her husband said, he's very clever. He said, if you want to see wildlife, get chickens. Because, right, all the wild animals come to the chicken coop to see if they can get a free meal. And
Right?
that's part of life, though. When kids have the opportunity to have domestic animals like chickens or sheep or cow or horse or goats or pigs, stuff happens and there's predators and or chickens get sick or cows, have trouble. So, pardon me, got a little frog in my throat.
Yeah, give yourself a minute. Give
Yeah.
yourself a minute. Yeah. So I think touching on, and I love that humor. If you want to see wildlife get chickens, right? I love that
It's
humor.
just that was actually, do you know the writer Cy Montgomery?
Mm-mm.
She's an incredible naturalist writer. She wrote like The Soul of an Octopus, which was like shortlisted.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Simon
she's
Montgomery. Okay.
she's my neighbor,
Oh,
and
cool.
we're close. And her husband Howard, he's a writer too, and he said that. And I just thought it was so true.
Oh my gosh, it's a total mic drop. Like
Yeah.
that is so funny.
It is so
Um,
funny. Yeah.
it's
All right.
so funny.
I'm ready to roll again.
And if you're ready to pick up on your stream of thought, go ahead. But
Yeah. So, part of having those opportunities with domestic animals is also, or any animal, is really the cycle of life. And I think that's really compelling for kids. It brings up a lot of opportunity to discuss the big questions of life, like what happens when your animal dies or, when they're not well and taking care of them. In terms of getting kids outside, kind of with a little bit of domestic animals involved, I love, and I've done this several times or many times over the course of my many years of teaching, is having kids spy on their dog or cat
mm,
after we've studied like wild canines or wild felines, and to see if they can see what those kind of ancient wolf behaviors are still happening in their dog
mm,
or their cat. And I think that's really compelling for kids. The whole idea of spying on something is very exciting. And then the idea that, they're living with a dog who was a wolf many, 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 many years ago, right?
mm.
That's very exciting. So I often will use those as a way to draw kids and making those connections from domestic to wild.
So good. A conversation we're having daily at the moment is that we used to be monkeys.
Oh.
And like, what was that like, you know?
Yeah.
So just sort of the silliness of it and bananas and hoo hoo ha kind of stuff. But you're reminding me. I really wanted my first dog to be a border collie. And I remember reading about border collies and this idea of giving eye, right? One of the few
Yeah.
breeds that like still has that deep instinct to hunt and kill in them, right? And that now we have domesticated or harnessed that for herding purposes. So interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I do have some friends with border collies, and sometimes I feel like they're giving me the eye.
Oh, yeah.
They're so intelligent, such intelligence in that dog breed.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Let's go on to some of your other books here. In 2025, Forest Magic for Kids came out, which thank you so much. I have a copy of right here, y'all.
Oh,
And it is
cute.
sparkly. I think it's a very good time to be talking about this because we're dropping this episode on Halloween, which is such a time of, magic and is it real? Isn't it real? Like what's going on? A little bit of sparkle, a little bit of glimmer, a little bit of reflection. But the subtitle of this book is How to Find Fairies, Make a Secret Fort, and Cook Up an Elfin Picnic.
Mm.
Talk to me, Susie. Like, where
I
did this
know.
come from? This is
I
so
know.
good.
It's kind of funny because, being a naturalist, I am very interested in science and very aware of the important role that science and truth have in our world. But working with kids, especially of late, I noticed that kids were not playing the way that maybe you and I had played when we were younger. There was less kind of imaginative play and more directed play. So if you think about kids in my neighborhood, they're like on soccer teams and they have soccer practice or their dance class or art class. They're always like going places and everything is really like adult supervised. And I was reminiscing about all that time I spent outside unsupervised by my parents and imagining using books like the Book of Narnia, all those books where you go through a closet and all of a sudden you're like in this magic world that everything is happening outside. And so I really wanted to write a book that celebrated all the ways that nature gives us an opportunity to have big imaginations.
Yeah.
And that might be, building a secret fort or thinking you're following the footsteps of a fairy when you're finding mushrooms or mixing up a potion, which is just like pine needles and mud. But
Mm.
it's that embodiment of what it could be and what your imagination can dream into. And I think that's a really important skill for kids to develop. So, Forest Magic for Kids is a celebration of that.
So good. It's powerful. And I think as I was looking through the book and we were talking before we started recording, you have all these great little exercises. And what's fun for me about it is that some of these are really geared towards children who probably aren't reading yet. So you're kind of writing for the adult parent who's reading and going, oh, okay, we're gonna go make a gnome house, for example. Let's talk about that one. I think it's on page 86.
Oh, I
Um,
love that. I think building like small worlds is a key ingredient to childhood. If you think about like Lego sets, that's like a small world, Playmobil, small world, even on a video context, Minecraft, small worlds.
mm.
So the small world part, hold on, I got a cough again, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Take a moment. I do think this idea of tiny worlds, right? And like really tapping in to creating a space of play
Yeah.
that is not being fed to you by a screen, which we haven't even gotten to that, but let's
Yeah,
go there
oh,
in a
I
minute.
know, I know. Yeah, so small worlds are so important because kids are the boss of the small world. Like, where else are they ever the boss? It gives them an opportunity to sort of be empowered, to be the manager of it. It works their small motor skills because it's always like tiny little pieces that are being manipulated. Outside, their senses are like all on fire. They're hearing, they're smelling, they're feeling, they're touching, everything. And then they're kind of working through social stuff. Like they're communicating a lot of times in the small world. If you're building it with friends, you're kind of figuring out who's building what and who's putting this where and what's this going to be. So small world creation is really important. An important aspect of free play and imaginative play. And so gnome homes, fairy houses, little little spots for tiny little mice to have adventures in, all of that. I think we should have more of that.
I
But
absolutely agree.
what I've been visiting a bunch of kindergartens lately, and when I think of my kindergarten experience, I remember there was like a dollhouse and there was like blocks, and they don't have that in a lot of kindergartens anymore. They're at their desk, they're doing work. And I understand the need for education, but I want to advocate for the child. Children need time to play, and they need
Mhm.
time to play kind of unsupervised. I mean, parents can be nearby, but not like directing the play, because that's where the big ideas come from.
Absolutely. Speaking of big ideas, I just listened to a TEDx talk exactly about this. I don't remember the title, but it was something to the effect of losing the generation of children playing freely
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
outdoors, something like that. And going deeper into some of the research about play and
yeah.
certain children and the ways that we learn. Adults too, by the way.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Kat, because I've been thinking a lot about that lately with the kids, but then expanding it and thinking about like, well, how do I play? And
Mm,
do I play? And what is the role of play in an adult's life? But it's the same thing that it is for kids. It's an opportunity to stretch your imagination, to engage, to communicate, to connect in a different way that's fun. So, yeah, more play for everybody.
absolutely.
Can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh,
Sorry.
so
What'd you
funny.
say?
Hold on a second. I paused the wrong. So I'm looking at your book right now, and this piece, Gnomes in Their Homes, and what we were just talking about with play and with creating a little place, especially for children where they're in charge. Like they create, we've got a neighbor who keeps coming over, and I swear every day she's like, oh, Taylor Swift's here. Okay, we got to go talk to her. And I'm like, what? Oh, right, that's right. That play comes up every day in her play right now is that Taylor Swift's here. We got to go talk to her. Like,
Hysterical.
so, so just like the beauty of really returning children to nature, maybe away from all the hustle and bustle and noise of our culture, back to this quiet space. And yet you're doing it, and the pictures are so cute in this book, by the way. They're like really, really engaging. You've got these two little gnomes hanging out on their little chairs, you know. These are the little garden gnomes, right?
Yeah.
You
They have
open.
a little mushroom lamp. Do you see the little mushroom lamp? I love that
Oh
detail.
my gosh. Yeah, I missed that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just for those watching on YouTube, there is a little mushroom lamp. You're gonna want to check this out. But I love that in this activity, gnomes in their homes, you're saying build your skills, constructing, problem solving, and world building. And
Mhm.
then on the other page, you have a list, which I love that the list is bring it.
Bring it, baby.
It's like secret notebook, pencil, bits of natural twine,
Mhm.
or things like twigs, leaves, bark, and stones, wild building materials, decorating materials, including bark, seed pods, leaves, flower petals, a homemade gnome, optional. Because it could also be imaginary. I'm wondering if that's what you're thinking there.
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's really important to use those natural materials, especially if you're building it outside and not use anything kind of artificial. So I'm not somebody who's going to be using glitter or glue or you know, beads, plastic beads, or things like that. It's just bark and stones and sticks and whatever is around on the ground. If it's on the ground, if it's not alive, I might use it and might have kids use it to build their home. And that's such a great challenge because it's so earthy. It's just really, what would a gnome really do? This is what they would really build with. It's what's around. So, getting into that and being accepting. And I think we can sometimes have an idea of like, I'm going to build this gnome home or a fairy home, and it's going to be really elaborate and it's going to be like on a calendar or on Instagram or whatever. But the
Mm.
reality is, it's so much better for the environment when it's just ephemeral, where you build it and you just build it out of all the natural things that are around you, and then you come back, see how long it lasts, and then you have to rebuild it. I think it's better all around.
It's so good. And around the world, especially in civilizations that are not as westernized as we are not producing as many artificial toys and products and all these things. That's what they're playing with,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right. And really that is the first things that we play with. Stones and sticks and water. And like it's when you have a young child and you give them a birthday present and they want to play with the box. They don't
Mm,
care what's in the box. It's the
yeah,
box. It's that like elemental. And I think getting back to basics is a really great thing for us. We're so modern. We've got our phones and we've got all of this and we've got apps and we've got video games and, lots of screens. And it's really great to just get back to the basics. Leaves,
absolutely.
sticks, flowers,
Are you familiar with the work of Andy Goldsworthy?
love it. Yeah.
Okay. For our listeners who might not know what we're talking about, is he European, British?
Yeah, yes, he's British.
I feel like UK somewhere. Um, so he makes these really huge, elaborate natural sculptures that are then, come from nature and return to nature. So, for example, the first one I think of, and we had a book of his growing up on our, whatever coffee table. And the first one I think of is like a spiral made of rocks on the beach. I think that was the cover of the book, right? But the point is, as the tide would come up, it would pull down the first rocks. And so then you just sort of have like these rainbow stripes left, and then it would pull those until the spiral was gone. And all you have left is just a little remnant of someone playing or creating. And I really believe we came here to create, to play, to be with each other and with nature at the deepest level, right?
Yeah, yeah, that makes me want to rush outside and build like a stone spiral in my yard. It's so true, and I think it's great. Like where I live, we get a lot of snow, and one thing I love to do is build a snow sculpture. I usually make a dog or some sort of animal because I love animals so much. And instead of like just using like sticks or stuff, I'll put bird seed on it so it becomes like a living bird feeder in a way. And it's just so much fun and it's ephemeral. It's there until the snow isn't or the seeds are gone or a whole combination. And I think that's kind of neat to watch things through the process. And since this is coming out on Halloween, that's a great thing to do with your jack-o'-lanterns. Kind of
Mm.
leave them out, put some bird seed in it, see what happens, see who shows up.
So fun. I love that idea. And I love just putting out an invitation to nature. Like, come on over. We just want to see you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's all we need is to remind ourselves of things like that. And we know, I mean, most of us know that when we spend time outside, we feel better for it. And
Mm.
that's really true for our children too. Like my mom was always like, go outside, you'll sleep better tonight. And that's true. And now the science is showing that. The science is showing that time outside increases your oxygen levels, increases your good feelings inside, decreases your stress hormones,
Mm.
gives you more vitamin D, gives your eyesight better workout. Like all of these things are now being studied. It's as if we needed them studied. We just kind of know inside of our heart that being outside is good for us, but now we have the medical advice to get your prescription for a little dose of nature every day.
So good. Time outside. I know the Japanese refer to it as forest bathing,
Yes,
right?
yes. I
And
love that.
I love that invitation to really get out. And as we were talking about Halloween, I was thinking about doing a crossword puzzle with my daughter. So we're coming up with all these little Halloween phrases. But what do you say on Halloween day? And it was, well, obviously, trick or treat is what you say, right? But I was thinking as we're connecting with nature, and putting bird seed out, it's like there's no trick. It's just a treat so that we could
Yeah,
see you and you could see us and see that we have this symbiotic relationship of observing one another and knowing and coming to love and care for one another. And
I
um,
love that.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
just.
the reciprocity of it, the time outside where we're connecting, and then as a result, we're better at taking care of the world around us. I think that's really important. And that, as a naturalist working with kids, that's always my hope, is that the kids that are spending time with me will take that into adulthood and be better stewards of the world, better livers in this beautiful one planet that we all live on.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And allowing nature to care for us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like to really receive the medicine of being
Yeah.
in the woods too. Because I love folks, I remember a gal I used to ride with, and we'd meet up to ride, and she'd have a radio on her arm that was, blaring music or whatever. And I remember saying, like, I can hear you coming, first of all, from a mile away. But second of all, if someone's coming up on us, you're not going to hear them because you're like totally tuned out. And where we live here in the Tetons, right outside of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, like that is sort of shunned. Like you're not really being present in nature and allowing yourself to hear and receive the birds, the
Yeah.
water, gosh, I took
Right.
this hike the other day to the wind caves and there was a huge rock slide, right? Like, whoa.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
What exciting.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're describing, and I love that you're describing it as the gifts of receiving, and that is what it is. And I think it does make us feel more deeply connected to the place that we live in, the home place of where we are.
Yeah, yeah. And I was going to touch on that because the school my children go to really emphasizes their tagline is place-based learning. And I feel like this is something that our national education system has fallen out of a little bit, where we have this real drive for sports and achievement and, all the testing and all of those things. And I just love to hear your take on it. And maybe we can weave this in to Book of Fairies, which is coming out in the fall, and also your podcast, which is coming, Wild at Home.
Yeah.
Like, could you speak on that?
Yeah, I do consider myself a place-based educator more. I mean, I'm a naturalist, but if I describe myself of what type of education I do with students, it's place-based. It's like what is happening in this place. So as a naturalist, I'm very specific to the Monadnock region of New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And I love that because it makes you really, really know where you are. You know when the lily of the valley is going to bloom, or when the jack in the pulpit's going to come up, or when the woolly bears are going to be in your leaves. You just kind of know that, and that's really knowing the rhythm of where you are. And I agree with you, Kat, so much about the emphasis in education sort of being misdirected. And maybe when maybe if we could start from the home place of where we are, it would build more community in the school, more connection to the place, more connection to each other. And then, the other stuff you can teach math and reading and science and social studies all through the place. So
Mm,
I would love to see a more integrated curriculum for students that was really centered on where they are, specifically in the elementary grades. I mean, as they get older, and their worldview can expand, then bring in other stuff. But why not stay local? Why not know your neighbors? It's like Mr. Rogers. These are the people in your neighborhood. Like it's like that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
yeah, I love that, and I'm all about it.
When you decide to publish a book, How do you know when you're ready? You've been through three books, and they're also, I just want to point out, I only have one here in front of me, but based on what I'm seeing and reading with the others, these are not simple books. They have beautiful, colorful graphics and lots of different layers and elements. And I mean, these are just, this is a beautiful book. How
Thank
do you
you.
decide you're done? What's your team? What's your process look like?
Yeah, I've been so fortunate to work with an incredible editor, the same editor on all three books, and she is such an inspiration for me. Just through our conversations, I get really inspired, and I feel like she's great at kind of getting me to think about my strengths as a writer and my strengths as a naturalist and building books off of that. And my strengths really are about helping people of all ages, but specifically kids, connect to the natural world. And then also the story, because young kids don't really deal that much in facts.
Mm.
They're really deal in story. And so I feel like a great way to kind of reach them is to go with the story and find those natural connections. So a good example might be, um, the story about the frog who gets kissed and turns into a prince. Like that's a pretty magical story. You read that story or you tell that story, and then it's a great opportunity to learn more about frogs and what really is a frog and what's the true magic of the frog. It goes through this incredible metamorphosis. So I feel like kind of laying out the story and then building the science into it is really where I'm at. And my books really reflect that. My latest book, The Book of Fairies, which is also sparkly, it's was a labor of love. This book I started when I was 8 years old, so many years ago. And it's filled with fairies from Eastern and Western European tradition, plus a few fairies of my own invention from when I was a child that explained kind of natural things. For example, have you ever noticed that there's rainbows inside bubbles, right?
Right.
So I was like, as a kid, I was like, what are those rainbows? I didn't know about light and prisms and, all of that. So I decided that there were fairies inside of there, and they were the bubblinis. That's what I named them. And the bubblinis have a little rainbow in their heart. And that's what gives every rainbow a little bit of rainbow inside of them. And I'm looking for the picture of the bubblinis, but I can't find it right now. But
So
you'll have
good.
to get the book and read
I'll have
about
to
the
get the book and
Bubblini.
future casting for future trick-or-treaters
That's
to dress
right.
up as a Bubblini.
Oh,
Because
right.
how awesome is that?
You gotta have, it's hard to see it. My camera's smudgy, but it's very cute.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And it has been such a gift to spend this time with you. And I know our listeners are going to want to follow up and check out your books, follow you. We'll have all of this information in the show notes, but where do you want people to find you? What socials do you hang out on? Website? Where can they get your books?
Sure, yeah. I'm on Instagram a lot, just under my name, Susie Spikol, because it's a very uncommon name. And you can also visit my website, which is just susiespikol.com. And I would love that. And if you have any comments or anything you want to share about my books and things that you've done with your family or yourself regarding them, I'd love to hear it. And
Awesome.
Kat, thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
I know we've covered a lot of ground. I've been so excited to interview you and been sort of sitting on this book and then hearing you had another one, and I'm really thrilled you have a podcast coming out. And once it's out, we will add it to the show notes just so you know. So keep us in the loop. Maybe you'll even re-air this interview on there because you shared so much beautiful information about who you are, your origin story with this work, and the incredible gifts you're putting out in the universe.
Thank you. And I so enjoyed talking with you and all the stories you shared too, Kat. So thank you. Keep making great podcasts.
Oh, appreciate you. Continue the story. And listeners, if you loved this, please share it with a friend, subscribe, follow along, leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want help getting your podcast into the top 2%, circle back. Or if you're craving adventures with horses, come see me because I'd love to help you out.
All
All
right, I'm
right,
booking my flight right now.
come on over. Let's start looking for your flight. All right, until we meet again, everyone, have a beautiful day and go seek that adventure that is seeking you.